Donald Trump recently stepped outside of his infamous echo chamber, and he proved to the world exactly why he likes to keep himself hidden away in that echo chamber. But if you end up getting anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that subscribe button. I'm trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. Now, we talk quite a bit on this channel about how Donald Trump seems to be filtering himself down into a smaller and smaller echo chamber, but to his credit, he stepped outside of that security blanket when he gave an interview to the Economic Club of Chicago. And of course, it did not go so well. Donald Trump is no longer used to confronting challenging questions, and therefore he kind of crumbled like a cookie and went on the attack. So let's go ahead and take a look at this first question, where he is asked about the recent reporting of him having phone calls with Vladimir Putin.
You just mentioned.
No, but these are big things. I have to mention them.
Yeah, you just mentioned Putin, though. And there's been this controversy the past week. Can you say yes or no whether you have talked to Vladimir Putin since you stopped being president?
Well, I don't comment on that, but I will tell you that if I did, it's a smart thing. If I'm friendly with people, if I have a relationship with people, that's a good thing, not a bad thing, in terms of a country. He's got 2,000 nuclear weapons, and so do we.
So, obviously, I didn't expect Trump to come out and explicitly say, well, yes, I have been having conversations with Putin. But he is basically telling us, in no uncertain terms, that, yeah, he's talking to Putin. And, of course, it would be a good thing if he was. So, I guess I kind of expected this, and he answered it in the most Trumpian way possible by praising his actions that he will not admit to. But let's go ahead and move on to a more serious question. Trump is asked about the different economists that are criticizing his economic plan. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say in response to that.
Wait a minute.
The markets are looking at the fact you are making all these promises. Latest one was car loans. You're flooding the thing with giving giveaways.
But we're going to grow.
I was actually quite kind to you. I used 7 trillion. The upper estimate is 15 trillion. People like the Wall Street Journal, who's hardly a communist organization,
yeah, but you don't know.
They have criticized you on this as well. You are running up enormous debt.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? I'm meeting with them tomorrow. What is?
Can we just acknowledge for a second that Donald Trump looks like a pouting child? He's got his arms crossed, and now he's going on the attack against the Wall Street Journal. I mean, how thin-skinned is this guy? He is pathetic. But let's go ahead and keep on moving.
What does the Wall Street Journal know? They've been wrong about everything. So have you, by the way. You've been wrong about it.
You're trying to turn this. You've
been wrong about it.
No, you're trying to turn this into debate. There are business people.
But you're wrong. You've been wrong. You've been wrong all your life on this stuff.
Classic Donald Trump, right? He doesn't want to answer the question. He's being criticized by other economists that say his plan is going to add more to the deficit than somebody like Kamala Harris's plan, and he just can't handle it. Instead of answering the question, he goes on the attack. He starts insulting the moderator. He starts insulting the Wall Street Journal. How are we supposed to trust this guy to be able to handle any tough situation if he is such a huge snowflake? I mean, this is just pathetic, childish behavior. We should be expecting more out of a presidential candidate. This is quite ridiculous, in my opinion. But let's go ahead and move on to Donald Trump trying to say that, well, he should have more influence over the Federal Reserve.
Really good. No,
whether you would.
I think I have the right to say, as a very good businessman and somebody that's used a lot of sense, I think I have the right to say that, you know, I think I'm better than he would be. I think I'm better than most people would be in that position. I think I have the right to say I think you should go up or down a little bit. I don't think I should be allowed to order it, but I think I have the right to put in comments as to whether or not interest rates should go up or down. You know?
Now, he's not saying that he should be able to force these changes, but he is saying that he needs to have more influence over the Federal Reserve. And I cannot tell you how bad of an idea this actually is. You do not want a president to have the control over the Federal Reserve because that sets up perverse incentives that would be detrimental to the economy as a whole. If Donald Trump is more worried about scoring political points and he's going to be pressuring the Fed chair to change rates, that is not going to be good for the American people. And we already saw the impacts of this in Donald Trump's first administration, where he was pressuring Jerome Powell to change the rates so he could score political points. This is not a good idea, and we shouldn't even entertain it as a serious one. Let's go ahead and move on to Donald Trump being asked about whether or not Google should be broken up. And well, we'll just go ahead and take a look at his answer. It's quite strange.
Should Google be broken up?
I just haven't gotten over something the Justice Department did yesterday, where Virginia cleaned up its voter rolls and got rid of thousands and thousands of bad votes, and the Justice Department sued them that they should be allowed to put those bad votes and illegal votes back in.
Why is he talking about voter rolls? The question was about whether or not Google should be broken up. What is he talking about? This man is not well. That's all I'm going to say.
And let the people vote. So I haven't gotten over that. A lot of people have seen that. They can't even believe it.
The question is about Google, President Trump.
Yeah, look, Google's got a lot of power. They're very bad to me, very, very bad to me. I mean, I can speak from that standpoint. They only have bad stories. In other words, if I have 20 good stories and 20 bad stories, and everyone's entitled to that, you'll only see the 20 bad stories. And I called the head of Google the other day, and I said, I'm getting a lot of good stories lately, but you don't find them in Google. I think it's a whole rigged deal. I think Google's rigged just like our government is rigged all over the place.
You would break them up, in other words.
So instead of answering the question, he wants to go on the attack. He wants to play the victim. He's trying to think up of this grand conspiracy that Google is somehow throttling good stories against him to try to paint him or portray him in a negative light. This is what Donald Trump does. If he doesn't like a poll, it's rigged. If he doesn't like the election results, it's rigged. If he doesn't like what's coming up on Google, somehow it's rigged. He is such a malignant narcissist. I cannot even stomach this guy anymore. He is so pathetic. Why not just answer the question and move on? Instead, you have to make everything about you and how everybody's against you and you're the biggest victim in all of the world. And it is just a damn shame, especially for somebody who wants to run the United States of America. I just don't even know what else to say. He's then asked about whether or not he will commit to a peaceful transfer of power, considering January 6th, and let's see what he has to say there.
Only 3 weeks to go to the election. Will you commit now to respecting and encouraging a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, you had a peaceful transfer of power.
You had a peaceful transfer of power. You had a peaceful... Come on, President Trump.
Why are there people in the audience that are clapping for this? There was not a peaceful transfer of power. We all remember January 6th, where Donald Trump riled up his supporters and they deployed violence to stop the certification of the 2020 election, based on the lie that somehow the election was stolen from Donald Trump. I don't know why people in the audience are clapping. There was not a peaceful transfer of power, and Donald Trump does know better, but of course he's not going to own up to that.
You had a peaceful transfer of power compared with Venezuela, but it was by far the worst transfer of power for a long time.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because this is what they like to do. This is what they like to do. It's very interesting.
The question, President Trump, is would you respect the decision?
When I found out about this interview, I did a little check. He's a man that has not been a big Trump fan over the years.
Again, he's going on the attack against the moderator instead of answering the question. This is not a challenging question. You should be able to very easily commit to a peaceful transfer of power. It is a simple question that deserves a simple answer, but Donald Trump is unable to do that.
So I had a choice. Do I do this interview or not? I'm glad I did it. But do I do this interview or do I disappoint a lot of people? Because I know a lot of people in the audience. But his view is very different than mine. Let me just tell you.
I'm asking you.
March, we had a term, peacefully and patriotically. These were people. If you think an election is crooked, and I do, 100%, if you think the day it comes when you can't protest, you take a look at the Democrats, they protested 2016, they're still protesting it. Nobody talks about them. But if we protest, we want to have honest elections. You think the last election was honest?
No,
do you think it was
all the times it went to courts? The courts
No,
sided
it didn't
together.
go. They went to court, and the courts all said, you don't have standing. No.
Donald Trump took 60 cases, I think it was more than 60, to courts around our country to try to challenge the 2020 election. And a lot of the times when they showed up to court, they weren't even able to present any evidence that there was some sort of election fraud or ballot fraud. That's why many of these cases were thrown out. Not all of them were just thrown out on standing, which really doesn't even make sense anyway, because standing is important. But there were other cases that they did look at the evidence, and there was nothing there. So Donald Trump not only tried to challenge the election in the courts, he also tried to assemble a fake slate of electors and try to get those fake electors certified on January 6th. And when that was not successful, that's where we got the mob of violent Trump supporters storming the Capitol. It's really not, I hope people do not forget this when they go to vote this November. There's so many people that I've come across that don't even know the full extent of Donald Trump trying to steal the 2020 election. But let's go ahead and move on. Donald Trump is asked about the economic impacts of something like mass deportation. Donald Trump's biggest promise that he is running on is he's going to carry out the largest mass deportation in U.S. history. So he should have a pretty good understanding of what that's going to look like and how it's going to impact our economy. So let's go ahead and see what he has to say.
A lot of people, the Congressional Budget Office is banking on the fact that there'll be $9 trillion added to the GDP of America over the next 10 years by immigrants. You want to stop that process. For all the people who run businesses in the audience, I'm just focusing on the economic thing. Are you prepared to say, look, it's fine to have a slightly smaller economy in exchange for having the immigration controls you
Okay,
want?
simple answer. I want a lot of people to come into our country, but I want them to come in legally. I don't want to have...
We just need to pause it right there and remind people that Donald Trump is threatening to revoke Haitian immigrants' temporary protective status. Those immigrants came in the country the right way, and you're threatening to deport them as well. So do not let him lie to you about, we just want them to come in the right way, because it's not true, and he's already proved that to us by threatening the deportation of Haitian immigrants. He's lying.
Murder.
But that means you will have to deport. You know, you are talking about deporting 11 million people. That is a lot of people.
Okay,
to
you
take
ready?
out.
It came out last week that 425,000 people are horrible criminals at the highest level, but it came out that 13,099 were let in during their administration. They tried to say longer, wrong. Over the last 3.5 years, 13,000 plus people came in, murderers. They're in jail for murder. Some were having the death penalty. They were all released into our country.
So again, instead of answering the question, Donald Trump is deflecting. And not only that, the deflection is just filled with lies. The 13,000 murderers that he is talking about are people who have been convicted of murder, that have come into the country or are here in the country, but that have come in over the last 40 plus years. These aren't just 13,000 undocumented immigrants that have come under the Biden and Harris administration, but that is what he wants you to believe. He is just lying. Most of these people are already locked up because they committed those murders when they got into the country. So instead of answering about what type of economic impacts do you expect from something like mass deportations, he just deflects and starts telling you a bunch of lies. Tried and true Donald Trump fashion. But, so these are the interesting parts that I picked out from this particular interview. I do want to say, I think that John Micklethwaite, the moderator or reporter here, I think he's the editor-in-chief of Bloomberg, if I'm not mistaken, but he did a really good job of asking tougher questions. He did a good job of pushing back, and we saw that Donald Trump was just unable to handle that because he is so wrapped up into his echo chamber. He's not used to adversarial questions, and he proved to the American people yet again that instead of confronting these questions with honest answers, he just crumbles like a cookie, goes on the attack, plays the victim. It's just more of the same. Now, I will say they did spend almost a third of the interview on talking about tariffs. I'm doing a whole different video on that. So be on the lookout for that. It's pretty good, too. It's quite impressive how little Donald Trump knows about something as simple as tariffs. So I will leave it there. If you guys got anything out of this video, please do remember to smash that like button and subscribe. Maybe share it with a friend or two. I'd very much appreciate that. Like I said, I'm trying to make it to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year, and I would very much appreciate your support. If you want to learn a little bit more how Donald Trump wraps himself up into that echo chamber we talk about, go ahead and watch that video on the screen now. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on the next one.